Hello and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, Spiritual Studies. And today we're going to finish John chapter 4. It's the fourth book of the New Testament. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at a very special Bible, a Bible that was special to Elvis. But before we do that, we're going to listen to a song. And this is a song about a cross that Elvis saw on a circle in the year 1967 when he bought the Circle G Ranch. Cross on the Circle. Hello, Gunn. Thank you so much for coming.
He saw the cross at dawn and said, "It's a good omen, and a dream again." At the break of dawn, through the window pane, he saw a cross in morning rain, white as grace, tall as prayer, calling him to build and share. Not a kingdom, not a throne, but a place of love alone, where laughter rides on horse's breath and peace outshines the fear of death. Come home to the circle and the sign, where the lake reflects the holy line. No one needs money, no one needs fame, just a handshake and a name. Come home where the cross stands tall. Come and share the love of all. Mobile homes and barbecue nights, trucks and trials and porch light rides, the hand-picked heart to share the dream, a mythic village by the stream. This is more than land, it's grace, refuge carved in sacred space, a gift of love to friends and kin, protected from the world's loud din. Come home to the circle and the sign, where the lake reflects the holy line. No one needs money, no one needs fame, just a handshake and a name. Come home, where the cross stands long. Come and share the love of all. Oh, come and share the love of all.
All good people, thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. Hello, Gunn. Hello, TT's ASMR. Thank you so much for joining us today. And for those of you that are here early, it's a very special treat today because we get to look at a very special Bible that was owned by Elvis Presley. Hi, Keith. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And this leather-bound volume was gifted to Elvis. You can see that it's a black leather Bible. And on the front, it's embossed in gold. Elvis Aaron Presley. The Aaron is spelled with one A. And we know that that is a misspelling that has been haunting Elvis his entire life. And this book is from 1975. So it's just a couple of years before Elvis passed away. But some people are still spelling his name with one A. In this particular Bible, the information that comes with it indicates it came through the mail by a fan named Carol Neely. And that she sent it to Graceland, wishing Elvis a speedy recovery after he had been in the hospital. And reports had gone out in the newspaper, and the fans had read them. So she sent Elvis this Bible, and it has some signs of use. It's just a little bit, just slightly worn. Not like the Bible that his Uncle Vester gave him, but slightly worn. And on the inside, she wrote this note to Elvis. And it says, "Dear Elvis, my prayers and thoughts are with you now, as always, for a speedy recovery and for future peace and contentment. May you find this peace and contentment in God's Word. My gift to you, a Bible. God's gift to you, His Son. Without Jesus, how lost we would be. For Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father, but by me. May John 14, 1 through 6, enrich your life as it has mine. Jesus Christ, plus absolutely nothing else, equals salvation. A devoted Christian friend, Carol. P.S. If you have any questions concerning the above, please feel free to contact me, Mrs. Richard Neely." She left her address. So she wrote Elvis a very personal message about their shared belief in Jesus Christ, and how she knew that because Elvis believed in Jesus, he had salvation, that he didn't need anything else. And she sent him the one thing she thought could make him better, and it was this Bible. And it must have touched Elvis. And Keith is saying, I wonder if Elvis reached out to her. And TT is saying, this is so cool. Well, I'm glad you like it, TT. I think it's pretty cool too, right? Elvis touched this Bible, given to him by a fan, but there's still some surprises coming. Like what Keith asked. Elvis sent her a thank you note. And it said, thank you for remembering me during my illness. And it's signed Elvis Presley. Now, is that really Elvis's signature? I don't know. You can see that the thank you note is obviously printed. Somebody in the office went out and bought a whole bunch of these thank you notes, most likely. He was probably getting hundreds of letters and probably gifts, wishing him well. And he would have sent out from the office hundreds of replies. So it's doubtful that he signed this particular thank you note in my mind. I'm not an expert on Elvis signatures. This doesn't quite look like an Elvis signature to me. Looks more like a female's writing. But it's really the thought that counts, right? He had a machine put in place, a machine of people that sent these thank yous out to his fans to make sure that nobody was forgotten for remembering him in his time of need. That all of these gifts would have touched him. But you can see that this fan, she still had the envelope. Mrs. Richard Neely. And Keith says it's incredible that it actually reached Elvis, that you hope that it's true. Well, we know that it reached the office and that there was a reply sent and that potentially it went all the way to Elvis, and this is his personal reply. This looks more like a form, but it's a form from Elvis, so it's still really special, right? I mean, obviously, Elvis can't answer every single letter that comes in, but he has a system in place so that you're not forgotten. And here's something else he sent her. And this one is dated, I believe, 1976, if you look at the postmark. It's a little odd because the postmark is from Nashville. And I kind of think that means this was sent from the Colonel's office. It says, "Season greetings, Elvis and the Colonel." And it's a postcard that has Elvis's picture and Santa Claus on the front. Now, that's not just Santa Claus. That's the Colonel. He's dressed up as Santa. And there, for some reason, it is a small doll. Well, not small. It's like 2.5 or 3 feet tall. That's standing next to Elvis, and they're in front of a very large Christmas tree. Elvis is roughly 6 feet tall. I would guess that Christmas tree, with the point on it, to be 10 feet tall. And the back of the card reads, "This space for holiday message." There is no message, but there is the address for Mrs. Richard Neely. And I believe this means that once she sent that gift, her name entered the rolls. That she was entered in as a fan of Elvis into the address capturing systems that they had at the time. Like today, you'd fill out email or something and you send it, and then they'd remember your email address and send you emails forever. This is the same thing, but they're doing this all manually. They're creating these lists of fans, and then those lists are being transmitted, probably on paper. You know, it's handed off over to the Colonel's office. And so now both the Colonel's office and Elvis's office at Graceland, they have rolls of these fans. And then when they send cards and stuff out, things for the holidays, whatever, they dip into these archives of these addresses and send this stuff out. So that's a little look behind the scenes of how the fandom works. But I don't personally think this was just a fan. The Bible was eventually purchased at a Graceland auction. So the story that comes with the Bible is that it came from a fan, but that it was actually in Elvis's bedroom when he passed away. Now, it's odd that it was in Elvis's bedroom to me, because other Bibles that were in Elvis's bedroom ended up with Patsy Presley. And Vernon later told her to keep all those Bibles and some other items they had removed from the bedroom And she sold many of those items in the early and mid 1980s. So it's odd to me that there was a Bible still in the bedroom, but that's what's coming with this. And I guess we can put some of our faith in this story, because this Bible came up into the public view at a Graceland auction. Now, not everything that's sold at a Graceland auction means it was owned by Graceland. Some of it is sold by Graceland, but it's coming from another owner. That's not clear to me, but it sounds, from the way they told the story, like the first time this Bible was ever available was when it was purchased at this auction in 2001 by a fan named Kelly. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Kelly contacted Carol Neely because she had these items that had her address. And somehow she was able to track her down all these years later in 2001. And they had some kind of correspondence in between each other, and we're able to see this piece, which is somewhere in the middle of that correspondence. And it says, "Hi, Kelly. Hope you like the copies. They were scanned and I think they turned out good." So I don't know what copies Carol's referring to. Could be something out of the Bible, could be something else. It's a mystery for us. We'll probably never know. But in the next paragraph, she says, "After 25 years, I still miss him." She's referring to Elvis. "But I have some real nice memories to fall back on." So when Carol says, "After 25 years, I still miss him, but I have some real nice memories to fall back on," that doesn't sound like a fan that mailed him a Bible and received, a Christmas card and a thank you note. It sounds like there's more to fall back on to me than that. I could just be reading that in. But then she says, "If you could send me pictures of the Bible, front cover, name of the Bible, where the ribbon is in the Bible, and if he wrote any notes in it." So Carol, she's excellent at this because she has keyed in to exactly where the meaning in this Bible that was in his bedroom, where the meaning might be. And it could be that he's done something to the front cover, you can see the where. And she wants to be sure that the name on the Bible is the one that she put on there so she can ensure this is her Bible. And where is the ribbon in the Bible? It's possible it's in the place that Elvis was last reading this Bible. And if he wrote any notes in it. So she wants to know what he thought about different Bible passages. He wouldn't be writing these notes to Carol. He'd be writing these notes as his thoughts about the passages. And Keith says they must have interacted. I don't know. But she doesn't write it as if they had not met in person. She writes as if they had met in person, is what it sounds like to me. Doesn't say that. But let's go on with what she does say. Carol says, "I would really appreciate it. There always was talk about the various books he was reading for spiritual enlightenment, and I sure hope this Bible was his book of choice." Or, "I hope the Bible was his book of choice." Or it might say this. I think maybe it does say this. So I think she may have had a hope that the very Bible she sent, no, it says the Bible. Her B is very fancy. But I think she's trying to get a look to see if he had read this Bible to bolster her own belief that the Bible was his book of choice. And Carol says it holds the answer to every question. You told me it was used a lot and pictures would be great. So Kelly, who has bought this Bible, has looked at it carefully and she believes it was used. Now, to us who only got to see the cover, it doesn't look as used as some of the other Bibles that we've seen him have. Particularly Vester's Bible, the Vester Cletus Bible. But it could be on the inside there's a lot more wear. And that the cover's held up rather well. And Carol's looking for that evidence that Elvis interacted with this Bible. It would really mean a lot to her. And she also says that this book holds the answer to every question, which I think is a similar statement to what Elvis is telegraphing, not actually saying, but telegraphing when he hands out copies of The Impersonal Life, which are really reflections about the scripture and pointing you back to the lessons of the scripture. And Elizabeth says, wow, that would be really something if it was really the Bible. That was his favorite book? I mean, I believe it was his favorite book. And Emma, hello Emma, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Carol says, that Bible has touched 3 lives. Mine, Elvis, and now yours. So Carol tracks how this book has now affected 3 different people. She knows it's had an emotional effect on her because she gave it to Elvis. And then she's hoping that it had an effect on Elvis because he's interacted with it in written things. Put his ribbon in a certain spot. And now Kelly has gone through the Bible and she's interacted with it and she's shared that emotion of Carol's and Elvis's. She's now part of this story. And Carol recognizes this, calls it out. And Elizabeth says that she believes the Bible was Elvis's favorite book also. That she has heard many times that it was. And Carol goes on and says, I can remember buying it and asking for his name to be put on it in gold. Now, Carol only spelled it with one A, his middle name Aaron, but I think we can forgive her for that because she remembers asking to have it put on the Bible's cover in gold so it'd be special. It would be his. Carol says, it's the same exact Bible that I have and still use today. So again, this isn't just any Bible. It's a direct connection to Carol, the fan, or whoever she is. That her Bible has changed her life. And she went to get that same Bible to try to give that to Elvis. That same ability to find all the answers in your life. And here we can see the front of this card that has a big tiger on it. And it says Elvis's karate name, Tiger. So for those of you that have followed me through the karate stories, you got a payoff here because here the karate is once again being referenced outside of the world of karate. But the fans know that the karate is Elvis. That it's intrinsically part of Elvis. And on the back, the last side of this card, the back of the card, Carol has continued, and she says, I have other Bibles, but that one gives me special comfort that is very meaningful to me. So again, Carol says this is why she bought this exact copy. She's had special experiences with it. Carol says, I have used it so hard that I had to tape the binding to keep it together. So Carol indicates that her faith leads her to this book, and she uses it quite a bit. And that her book resembles the Vester and Cletus copy of the King James Version that Elvis had that we saw. It meant a lot to her. And she was trying to give that to Elvis. Carol says, I really don't want to get it rebound. It just would never be the same. And there's an ache and a longing in what Carol says. And I think it actually reflects back on Elvis himself. She doesn't want to change anything about what happened with Elvis. It would just never be the same. She's sad that he's gone. But she doesn't know now how anything could be different. It's just a reflection that when you walk a path with a constant companion, you don't want that companion to be returned to the state that they were at the beginning of the path. You've grown together. And she wants to remember all that growth. So she's not going to get this book rebound. It's just going to be held together with the tape. And Carol says, with all the notes written inside, pages that are loose and some torn, it has changed my life. And she underlines, it has changed my life. This was the message she was trying to tell Elvis. And she spelled it out for Kelly, who now has Elvis's Bible. And Carol says again, thank you for the pictures. Your call plus the photos that you sent were an answer to prayer, because I often wondered what became of it. So like many fans, I'm sure Carol was devastated by Elvis's passing. And through those years, she wondered, did my Bible make any difference? And Kelly has sent proof that it did. That the time that Carol took to purchase and have that Bible personalized, that she sent, the time she took to send it, and whatever she paid, and all those years of wondering what happened, it was all worth it. Because he did use the Bible. And Carol says, take care, and let's keep in touch. Carol. And that's where the Bible went in 2001. Now, 20 years later, in 2021, it was sold again at auction for $9,000, which is pretty cheap for an Elvis Bible with a great story, because the Vester Cletus Bible sold for over $100,000 around the same time. Now, who is Carol Neely? Well, we've seen that she is Mrs. Richard Neely. We've seen that on the previous... In fact, let's just go back and refresh our memory. You can see it's written sideways, Mrs. Richard Neely. And here at the bottom of this this note that she wrote into the Bible to Elvis, it says, Mrs. Richard Neely. And Elizabeth says that's amazing, and she would have thought it went for a lot more. I agree. But let me show you why it probably should have gone for a lot more money. Okay, now this is hard to see in this Bible. This is the records page of a Bible. It's not the Bible we're talking about. This Bible was owned by Vernon and D. Presley. And if you've watched my video about this Bible, you'll know that in these record pages, she left somebody out. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, you're going to have to go back into the archive, and you're going to have to find that video for yourself and watch it, because it's going to blow you away. But a piece I didn't show in that video about this Bible is this page. And if you look under where it says Mother's Family, it says Mother's Brothers. And so it's telling us who is D. Presley's brothers. And the first one is Richard Neely. Now, you tell me, is Carol Neely Richard Neely's wife? Is Carol Neely D. Presley's sister-in-law? Which would mean that in a very strange and strained way, Elvis would have been related to Carol Neely through marriage. But there would have been a familial relation there. Like, she may have been at Graceland, or at least at Dolan Drive, for various family functions, and have actually met and interacted with Elvis. Now, I don't know. I can only show you this name right here in this Bible that shows us that Richard Neely is Dee's brother. D. Stanley Presley's brother. So you guys let me know in the comments in the chat, do you think Carol Neely is D. Presley's sister-in-law? And TT's ASMR says $9,000, that's all. That's it. But there was a rush to sell a lot of Bibles around then because of that $100,000 Bible. There was one other that got close, but most of them didn't get anywhere near that. They tend to be more in this $10,000 range, which was where all of them were for a very long period. And Elizabeth says she would have thought it would have been a lot more. And Keith says, what a great connection with that Bible. But is it a true connection? I don't know. I just think that it is. I don't think this was just a fan. I think these people that sold this Bible did not understand the true connection of the person that gave this Bible to Elvis. And Keith says, no doubt it's Dee Presley's sister-in-law. And that was my fun Bible story for us for the day. And now we can finish out chapter 4 of the book of John. And we'll start with verse 36, which is, and he that reapeth receiveth wages, and gathereth fruit unto life eternal, that both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. And this verse is in reference to the crowds of people that have come to hear Jesus speak, and that Jesus, together with the disciples, will now be sowing and reaping their harvest. In verse 37 says, "And herein is that saying true, one soweth and another reapeth." I think what this verse is trying to tell us is that when you witness, when you go forth and you spread the word, when you tell people about Jesus and God, you cannot expect that you will convert them in that moment. You are sowing. You've got to give it time to grow before you can reap, just like a farmer. So one person's going to go out there and sow this word, and there will be others that come behind and they will reap the harvest. Those hearts will now be ready to accept Jesus into themselves. But when they first hear, they're reluctant. Parts of them push the message away. This is exactly the same message that we have heard in the impersonal life. That there's too much of you in the way to hear I am, the divine you inside. And so that when somebody comes along telling you this truth, your ego or your secular portion of you, it doesn't let the message through. Now your inner self hears it, it recognizes it as true, but it allows that other portion to keep it away. But over time, this can work on a person, and then they'll be ready for when the next person comes along, and then they're reaping the harvest. And in this particular instance, Jesus is sowing, and soon he'll be gone, and his disciples will reap this harvest. And in verse 38, Jesus says, "I sent you to reap that whereon ye bestowed no labor, other men labored, and ye are entered into their labors." And I think that's what he's saying here, is that God has prepared the way to these people's hearts. And we don't know exactly how he's done it at this point, but they're here. And that now it's time for the disciples to reap. And verse 39 says, "And many of the Samaritans of that city." And so I've gone back and done a little research about Samaritans. And Elizabeth asked, which chapter is this? This is the book of John, fourth book of the New Testament, chapter 4, and we're on verse 39. And Elizabeth also said she loved that story about the Bible. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I thought it was very special. And I think it's far more special than what anyone, other than the 7 of us who are watching at this very moment, have ever recognized. Just the 7 of us. Now, by tomorrow, there'll be about 100 of us. I usually get about 100 watches. Now, not all of them watch all the way through. So many of them will miss too. So it will be less than 100 people in the world who know what we know about that Bible. But I have done some research about the Samaritans, and they do live at the well that was referenced earlier in this chapter, that's connected to Jacob and Joseph and early Israelites. And they are apparently a branch of the Jewish people, but they have been separated from the Jewish people for so long by the point of these stories in the Bible that they're no longer considered Jewish. And they only accept the first 5 books of the Torah or what we would think of as the Old Testament, the books that are written by Moses, and they do not accept any books written afterwards. That is what separates them from the Jewish people. And the Jews do not see them as Jewish, even though they have this shared belief. Now, for all the many times I've ever heard the story of the Good Samaritan, never had any idea that they were so closely linked to the Jewish people. If you watch Star Trek, like I'm a huge Star Trek fan, there are the Vulcans and the Romulans, and they both have pointed ears. And later on in the series, it finally turns out that the Romulans are an offshoot of the Vulcan people. They left because they didn't have all the same beliefs. Well, it's almost a mirror of this. And the Vulcan people themselves have a symbol that they hold up with their hands, and it means live long and prosper. That is a Jewish symbol that is used during Jewish services, because Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock, was Jewish, and he knew that symbol, and he thought it looked neat, and that's why he used it. But there are now these multiple connections that I can see between the Jewish people and the Vulcans and the Romulans, which is a major... I've gone far away from what we're talking about here, which is Elvis. So we got to dial myself back in, but just a little bit of Star Trek trivia that's connected to this Elvis in the Bible. And Elvis did love Star Trek. So one day I'll talk a lot more about it. But these Samaritans, you know what separates the Samaritans and the Jews? Well, those of us from outside the Jewish faith would look at this and say, well, like nothing. But to them, it's an extreme difference. And so they are outside the Jewish faith. So for Jesus to come to them and say, I can save you too, well, this is unheard of. People don't mix these circles of people together. People divide each other. That's what we're used to. That's what all of history had been used to up to this point. And here comes this man, and he says, no, we should all be together. We got to all come back into the same circle. And in verse 39, he says, and many of the Samaritans of that city believed on him for the saying of the woman, which testified, he told me all that ever I did. So this was the woman who was at the well, and Elvis asked her for a drink of water, and then he told her that he could give her living water, and she questioned if he was a prophet, and then he told her about his whole life, apparently, from what she said, and she is absolutely convinced that he is the Messiah or the Christ. And she's gone into the city and told all these people, and that's why they're all out here. They want to see for themselves. And in verse 40, so when the Samaritans were come unto him, they besought him that he would tarry with them, and he abode there 2 days. So they believed. When the Samaritans came and heard, when they saw him, they believed what he was saying. And they said, please don't leave. You just got here. We're just now hearing this truth. Let me know the rest of it. Let us hear it all. So he stayed for 2 days. They told him, we got others. We got to pull out of the city to see you. Can't leave yet. We've got to bring everybody. So he stays for 2 days. And Elizabeth says she used to watch Star Trek too. And Keith says him too. Well, I have one episode about a special Star Trek connection. I want to do a series about a whole bunch of them, but if you go out on the channel, you can find it. And it's about the very first episode of Star Trek, The Cage, which was the pilot episode. It didn't even have Kirk. But it did have an Elvis connection, a very strong Elvis connection. And in verse 41, says, and many more believed because of his own word. And so 41 tells us they witnessed. They came, they saw, they had to believe. And 42 says, and said unto the woman, now we believe, not because of thy saying, for we have heard him ourselves, and know that this is indeed the Christ, the Savior of the world. So the woman convinced him to come out here, but once they heard, they turned to her and said, you're right. This is the Christ. And it's not just because you say it, it's because I hear it with my own ears. The book goes on. Now, after 2 days, he departed thence and went into Galilee. So he spent 2 days with the Samaritans. And he probably converted a lot of souls. There was probably a lot of baptism going on. His disciples probably earned a lot of experience talking to a lot of people that were outside of their own religion. Now, the other thing to remember about Samaritans is that they are not Gentiles. So there are Jews and there are Gentiles, and that's the binary system with which most people who look at these religions from the outside would say that exist. Like, all the time that I've ever read the Bible, I thought it was Jews and Gentiles. But it turns out there are other groups, like the Samaritans, who fit in between the Jews and the Gentiles. The Jews don't consider the Samaritans Gentiles. They consider them Samaritans, which is a different category. The Gentiles is like everybody else. But the Samaritans are special, and the Jews recognize that, but they're not Jews. And Keith says he's got to look up that Elvis Connected Star Trek episode. And Elizabeth says, yeah, her too. She didn't know it at all. Yep, it's true. And there's a connection to almost every episode. And they're much, much better than the one I show in the cage. I just haven't got there yet. Now, number 44, verse 44. For Jesus himself testified that a prophet hath no honor in his own country. So this is a really interesting statement of Jesus, that a prophet hath no honor in his own country. What he's saying is, the Jews themselves, he's Jewish, but the Jews do not believe he is the Christ. They do not believe he is the Savior. At least the government of the Jews is very clear that he's not. Now, he's obviously converted many Jewish people. That's what John the Baptist is out there doing. But he's also making converts of Gentiles and Samaritans. And that amongst the Gentiles and the Samaritans, he's being honored as a prophet. The lady at the well immediately saw that he was a prophet. He's having a lot more difficulty convincing the Jewish people. And I think this is similar to Elvis's own experience in life as a singer, that he had much more difficulty convincing the people in Memphis that he could sing, because before he cut that first record, it took him a while to get into Sam Phillips, to get Sam Phillips to believe in him. And even after he met Sam had to push him off onto Scotty Moore for another opinion and then come in to work, and then they cut the song. But before that, he wanted to be in these gospel groups. And he kept applying to these gospel groups, but they would turn him down. He also sang around town in some clubs and stuff, but it was rough. He had a rough start. People don't know that about Elvis. A lot of people don't. A lot of fans don't understand that he didn't just walk in and cut that record and then everything was rosy after that. It was still tough after that. But before that, he had done a lot of singing work that people don't know about. And people recognized that he was a good singer, but they didn't think, he's going to be fantastic. And then even in his own genre, which at that moment, when he became famous, was really country because there was no rock and roll. Rock and roll was something that had been named on a radio program and in a popular movie, but it was not yet a true genre of music. Had a couple of examples of music that was pushing towards that limit, like Rocket 88 or Rock Around the Clock. But we now look back and say those are true rock songs, but nobody then would have because they didn't understand rock and roll at all. Didn't even know it was a thing. So Elvis was in the country music, or what they began to call rockabilly. And then he gets over to the Grand Ole Opry, and we've all heard that story. Someone told him to go back to driving a truck. Not exactly a true story, but Elvis did have experiences like that. And there was an experience at the Opry that was similar to that, but he got that a lot, that he wasn't accepted within his own chosen areas. And then suddenly, once he gets out to like Hollywood and into New York and onto people's television screens and then into the movies, boom, he's everywhere. Everybody loves him. Now the kids always loved him, right? Like the young folks. But there was the older generation, what you could think of as the government of the Jews, these Pharisees. Well, Elvis had his Pharisees, and they were basically people that were older than him. And they were saying, not going to make it, kid. It's not going to happen. And Keith says that Vegas shot down Elvis too in the early years. Well, I don't know that they shot him down. I know the story. I think it's exaggerated. I don't think he did as well as he wanted to. But that's not the same as failing either, right? We see this in the movies all the time. When they talk about this movie that failed, well, this movie it may have made $100 million on top of its actual budget, and they're like, well, it failed. Well, how much did you want it to make? That's the question. It didn't make as much as you wanted it to, but it still made money. That's not a failure. And Keith says you would have thought JD, who was JD Sumner, would have helped Elvis out because as a kid, JD led him in all those gospel shows. Well, and he was friendly with Elvis, but JD himself, he wasn't in charge of any of those gospel groups at that time. He came to know the business very well. And he did get in charge of the groups. And his groups made money because gospel singing is a business. And you got to keep your people employed. And he was a good employer. He was good at the business side of it. But back then, he learned the ropes himself. So I don't know how much he could have done for Elvis, and they weren't really that close then. He was a poor kid that he let in the back door. And the groups that Elvis was trying to join were groups of young men that were like farm leagues for larger gospel groups. So in baseball, you got your majors and you got your minor leagues. And the minor leagues are basically farm leagues for the major groups. They have people who are very talented, but they're not quite talented enough to be in the majors. But you don't want to lose track of them or let them lose their talents by not playing baseball. And they're willing to, for a small wage, make their life baseball. And some of them improve enough that, hey, we need them in the majors now. That's kind of the groups that Elvis was trying to get into at that time, which I think was a reflection of where he felt he himself belonged at the time. He didn't have faith in himself. He had enough faith to go out there and try. He had enough faith to put himself out there. But he didn't have faith that he alone was going to be alone in making it. He saw himself as part of a group. And he saw himself as a support member in a group, not necessarily the lead guy. And so part of his growing and experience was to learn that self-reliance and that self-judgment, that you're doing the right thing. And you got to keep following the path. And that's what Sam Phillips gave him. Once he started to work with Sam reassured him over and over that his judgment was correct in these matters about what sounded good, and that he had to be original and be himself, and he had to blaze that path as far as he could go, because that's the originality that people were looking for. And that's the sound that Sam himself had been trying to find. But let's get back here to the book, to verse 55. Then when Jesus was coming to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things that he did at Jerusalem at the feast, for they also went into the feast. This is telling us that word of Jesus has spread ahead of him. When he turned that water into wine, others saw that, and they were from Galilee, and they have returned to Galilee. And they've told others that this happened. And so Galilee is expecting him, and they're expecting miracles. The book says, so Jesus came again into Cana of Galilee, where he made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. So I did misspeak about what he did at Jerusalem at the feast. Because it was in Cana, they're saying that he made the water into wine. I think at Jerusalem he was actually healing people. This book didn't get really into it, John, but I believe there were miracles being performed in Jerusalem. 47 says, when he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee, he went unto him and besought him that he would come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then said Jesus unto him, except ye see signs and wonders, ye will not believe. So Jesus is telling this nobleman that you don't have any faith, that your faith is based upon spectacle, and I have no spectacle for you, and therefore you're not going to believe, and therefore your son will not be healed. And the nobleman saith unto him, Sir, come down ere my child die. And Jesus saith unto him, Go thy way, thy son liveth. And the man believed the word that Jesus had spoken unto him, and he went away. So there was no spectacle. Jesus simply told him, I've done as you've asked. Your son's been healed, if you believe. And he believed. The man believed without spectacle. And as he was now going down, his servants met him and told him, saying, Thy son liveth. Then inquired he of them the hour when he began to amend. And they said unto him, Yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him. Now you may be thinking, why did it take this man so long to get back to his son? It's travel times in the old days. He's come a distance to see Jesus, to try to bring him to his son. But verse 53 says, So the father knew that it was at the same hour in which Jesus said unto him, Thy son liveth, and himself believed in his whole house. So the nobleman recognizes the miracle because of the timing of the miracle, and he connects it to his own belief in what Jesus said to him in that moment. In 54, this is again the second miracle that Jesus did when he was come out of Judea into Galilee. So this is confusing too, because it says second miracle that Jesus did. I think he was doing miracles in Jerusalem. He was certainly preaching in Jerusalem. I think this is just the second miracle he did here in Galilee, outside of Judea, which is Israel. And that brings us to the end of chapter 4 of John. And in the next episode, we'll move forward into Joseph Benner, chapter 4, the impersonal life, consciousness, intelligence, and will. And Elizabeth says, wow, that shows what can happen if you believe hard enough. And Gunn says, you don't believe the signs of wonder, you don't believe. So I think what he was telling him, Gunn, was that some people will only believe if there are the signs and the spectacle. But that neither of those is required. What's required is faith. But I may have been misreading what you've written here too. And Keith says that Jesus was also baptizing non-believers in the rivers. Well, his disciples were, yes. And I'm going to leave you guys all with a song today because we're past our hour. And this is my song about Elvis's personal travel through these words, through the scriptures, and through the impersonal life. And it's called Word on Fire. And until I see you all again, hopefully 3 p.m. today, Eastern Standard Time, y'all keep on taking care of business.
right. No